Combat back at it. It is MK all day, nearly every day, and it's bonus video time today as you look into my eyes. The BBC, the beige one, Brian Campbell. Story time with Sugar is back. I've got Hall of Famer Rashad Evans, the former light heavyweight champ of the world. And Rashad, this is what we do, you and I, fight by fight, moment by moment. You're as concise and candid as we could ever hope for. And today is a big one. September 6th, 2008, UFC 88. Rashad Evans versus Chuck Liddell. How much, Rashad, does it get you fired up to go back down memory road with we on this one?
Oh, man, this one right here, it gets me especially fired up. You know, there was a turning point in my career at this fight. And, you know, I still remember just the feelings that I had going into this fight as if it was yesterday, and, you know, just all the emotion around it. So this is a huge one for me because I still feel it so much.
A true star-making moment, almost a passing of the guard from one former champion and certainly pay-per-view draw to a new one who was on the way. So we encourage you to like this video, subscribe to everything we are doing here on Morning Combat on YouTube, or whether you're listening on orally, if you will. We do oral on this show. Apparently we do via podcast, but we got a lot of fun stuff. As always, last episode on Storytime with Sugar, we of course looked at the split decision win over Michael Bisping, which was the launching point for 28-year-old Rashad Evans to enter this fight. Rashad, before we start breaking it down, and we're going to break it down in excessive detail here, this might be it's crazy to say, but this might be the biggest win of your career. I know you would go on to win the UFC title, but this is Chuck Liddell in one of the most iconic finishes in UFC history.
Yeah, no doubt. This was the biggest fight in my career. You know, just the stakes weren't, you know, for a belt or anything like that, but what was at stake was a lot. You know, it really meant, you know, if I was going to be that athlete who got a chance to be a blockbuster athlete by having so many, you know, high numbers in pay-per-views or becoming a champion, I would have to get by a Chuck Liddell, you know, and, you know, my stock wasn't selling unless I could beat somebody like Chuck Liddell. And I've reached the point up until Chuck Liddell where I've beaten, you know, my peers, that, you know, my skill level, and now it's time for me to graduate to a new level. So had I not been able to do this, I may have just stuck around competing against the same guys and may not advance to the next level of competition.
You were 10 months removed at UFC 88 from that victory over Bisping. So it's obvious that UFC was ready to move you with intention here, closer to a title fight. This was a big opportunity. The title, of course, is UFC 88 Breakthrough, back when we used to have those. And Rashad, I mean, just a general look at the storylines here, it makes a lot of sense. The UFC is trying to find out, is this Rashad Evans for real as a brand, as a potential title contender? We know the result of this fight. We know this would be your last stop before getting a title shot. But for Chuck Liddell, the old gunslinger here, he was fresh off a big comeback win that he needed 9 months earlier when he took a unanimous decision from Wanderlei Silva in one of the more fun action fights that we remember. A lot of hype for that one. But right before that, he had the knockout loss to Rampage Jackson for the title. He had the split decision loss to your teammate, Keith Jardine. So this had a crossroads element feel. Can Chuck get back to being Chuck, or is Rashad what we think he might be? Or is he just some athletic guy who dances a lot in the cage? As you know, that narrative, Rashad, it's following you even into 2008 here. All right.
I know, and they wouldn't let me shake it. But I mean, you framed it up correctly. You know, this was a huge fight, and for Chuck Liddell, you know, he came back after having a great fight with Wanderlei Silva, proving that, you know, he still has some tread left on his tires, and he really excited a lot of people with that fight because there was glimpses of the old Chuck in that fight, and we just knew, or those fans knew at the time, that, you know, it took maybe just one more fight before he got a chance to become champion again. And I was that one fight.
Well, this previous year and a half leading into this fight for you, you had breakout moments after breakout moments. Look, you had your first main event in 2007 when you head kicked Sean Salmon to finish him. That got people's attention. Then the draw with Tito Ortiz 6 months later, which we talked about on this episode in the past. It was a lot that you took from that. You also maybe took some lateral steps or some, it was a close fight against a big name, but you were still learning on the job. Well, then we got to the Michael Bisping fight where I think you made, some huge leaps forward. So here we are, September 6th, 2008. Atlanta is the backdrop. Phillips Arena, a sold-out crowd of 14,736. It would do a $2.6 million gate for Chuck versus Rashad. 480,000 pay-per-view buys. That's not something to forget and blink at there. But you are 28 years old, 11-0-1 technically. Back then, of course, they're billing you as 16-0-1, counting all the Ultimate Fighter wins, I guess. Rashad, are we still on that?
Yeah, they counted those because ours was the only season that was sanctioned for 3 rounds. All the other ones were only sanctioned for 2, and they had the extra one if they needed it. But ours actually sanctioned for the 3 rounds, so it counted as a professional fight on our careers.
Absolutely. Chuck Liddell coming in with that 21-5 record, the former champion. I'm trying to get the Iceman's age correct here. 38 years old. Does that make sense? 38 years old, Chuck Liddell?
38.
I don't know if that's right. I'll have to do the math and check that out there in a second. But I found some tape of the Friday weigh-in in Rashad in Atlanta. Good stare down, mutual respect. Chuck's got a little bit of belly fat around the stomach. You can see the abs poking through, but that's sort of old man Chuck. He's carrying himself a bit like an old man, but he's still dangerous as heck. When you got the call off the Bisping win, let's start right there. Where are you at mentally in your career? What do you think this fight could offer you? How nervous are you at facing the aura of that legitimate right hand power that is the Iceman's finishing move?
Well, when I got the call, I was kind of excited because I just watched Keith Jardine beat Chuck Liddell, and for that camp, I was a big part of that camp. Studying Chuck and trying to beat Chuck Liddell for Keith Jardine a lot of times. So I had a pretty good idea on what to do against Chuck, and kind of the whole the scariness of Chuck kind of got taken away a bit when Keith Jardine beat him. And I started to see some holes in his game, but at the same time, I mean, this was Chuck Liddell. I mean, there was no escaping the fact that this was Chuck Liddell. And I know my boy beat him. I know he got knocked out by Rampage, but at the same time, it was like maybe those were just off days. You know what I'm saying? Maybe he's had something special for me, and it was just one of those things that going into this fight, I was confident and I was ready, but at the same time, I was still mad nervous because I had Chuck Liddell, man.
I mean, that's the thing. If you had watched that Wanderlei Silva fight, which I'm sure you did, he still had it in that one. You may have seen. I guess some slippage. I mean, look, I just checked it up. He was 38 entering this fight against you. So we're not tricking ourselves to believe that this is the guy who, rolled through Tito and Babalu, but we're not that far removed from that version, though. It's still who he is. He's going to cock that right hand, and you're either going to get hit by it or you're going to find a way to get around him, or as you did, go through him. So I was watching that quick Friday weigh-in tape. You say afterwards you're excited as hell. I mean, you sound still like young, wide-eyed Rashad. I'm sure you probably started to live the life after this one. We can get into that. But Chuck got the microphone and said, I look forward to coming after him and putting him to sleep. Now, Rashad, I checked out a phone interview, oddly enough, that you did a week after this fight with Penny Hovington of Combat Wire. I don't know if that's still a thing, but you told a story about sitting in the locker room before the start of this main event, UFC 88, and seeing some kind of fan poll result on the screen of fans texting in who they thought would win, and only 18% of fans thought you could beat Chuck Liddell. You told her, quote, wow, there are going to be a lot of upset people tonight. Is that a real story? That happened?
Yeah, that was a real story. I remember just sitting in the dressing room, and this is after I had my mind just like in that, like the FU mode, and I was just like really, really dialed in and really focused. And this after I had my talk with Randy Couture. So I was super dialed in. And when I seen that, I was like, oh yeah, they're gonna be some really upset people, man, because no one was giving me a chance in this whole thing. To like even going to like the whole thing when it got set up. When it got set up, we went to Atlanta to do a press conference, and me and Chuck Liddell, we do our spots together. Like we went to the radio stations and we did it all together and stuff like that because the beef wasn't so bad. So we were traveling together in the same van doing these these pre-fight pre-fight interviews and stuff. So we're in the van together, and then it was towards the end of the day, and they were like, "Oh, Chuck, Dana's waiting for you in the plane, so we got to drop you off first." And I was like, "Plane?" I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "Oh." Then Chuck was like, "Oh yeah, me and Dana flew together." And I was like, "Oh, you guys flew together?" He's like, "Yeah, we flew together on a private jet." And I was like, "Oh, wow. Okay." And I just did that, right? So I guess Jen Wink went back and said something to Dana. And then Dana White, he called me like when I got home after that event and was just like, "Bro, it's nothing like that. Me and Chuck Liddell's been friends for years, and I used to manage him." And he just, he's trying to tell me that he's not favoring him, even though it may look
Well,
as if it
here's
is.
the thing, Rashad. He does have that history. So when he tells you that, it's right. I mean, they were friends and he managed him. But if you watch the Conor McGregor documentary that's out there on, I don't know, Netflix or wherever it is, they went, Lorenzo and Dana show up at Conor's rented house many times in Vegas as he's preparing for Aldo or preparing for Mendez, and they have the whiskey with him. So, they're going to back and roll with the guy who's the money man. And let's be honest about what you were up against here. Not just the power of Chuck, but like the ledge. I mean, he's like,
Yeah.
has there been a more organic fan favorite in UFC history than Chuck Liddell? The only other name that I could think that's in that unique category is like a Randy Couture Captain America, somebody that the fans were like, "That's my guy, ride or die." So, I mean, he's a pillar of what the UFC is all about. Dana to this day still says, look up, MMA fighter in the dictionary and you'll see Chuck. So you're fighting the aura, you're fighting the company, you're fighting a lot of things in this one, Rashad. But one thing that you talked about in this interview I mentioned about your confidence leading in that I'd like you to expand upon is you told the story. I believe this was your first camp with Jackson Wink. Is that correct?
What, with the Chuck Liddell fight?
It was early in your run at the
Yeah,
very least.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It was early. It was early when I started working with them. Yeah.
Well, you had mentioned Coach Winklejohn had found going through the tape early that opening of how you would end up winning this fight, that overhand right, and that he told you would knock him out with it. How much do you remember that being part of the game plan coming in?
I remember it. I remember that big time because me and Coach Winklejohn, we would end every pad session, and our pad sessions were like an hour and a half. And it was interesting. Mike Winklejohn, we'll be talking regular conversations, and then we'll do these combinations, and we can go. We'll end up like hitting Mitch for like an hour and a half, and then every single time that we finish, we'll end off with that combination. And it was one that gave me confidence because it would hit, and it would make me feel like I can just like knock out a horse with that punch. So he always liked to end with that punch. And he's like telling me like, "Yo, you hit him with this punch. I'm telling you, he's going to go to sleep. He's gone. He's gone." And then on the day before the fight, when I was warming up, I was hitting the mitts, and, he was saying the same thing. And he's like, "You know what? This is the punch that's going to knock him out. You're going to hit him so hard, I'm not going to be able to get in the cage and congratulate you." That's what he said to me.
He wasn't kidding right there. When you talk to Miss Huffington about your camp, you mentioned, of course, Keith Jardine playing a big role, who, as you said, had just beaten Chuck by split decision in a very, strategic, technical, but tough fight. You also talked about bringing in former heavyweight contender Paul Buenatello to mimic Chuck Liddell. Do you remember those sessions?
Yeah, I do, man. Paul Buenatello was key. He's such a good boxer, the old headhunter. One thing that Paul was good at, he had very good boxing fundamentals, like old school boxing fundamentals. So he was very, he was able to impart a lot of his wisdom on me and help me out big time in that fight with just range and distance and understanding how to get him to walk into my traps.
Absolutely. Now, you also mentioned you thanked in this interview that I was referencing the work of all your teammates from GSP to Nate Marquardt. But I was wondering where the John Jones rise within Jackson Wink intersected with this. We know that looking at John Jones's Wikipedia page, that he made his UFC debut a month earlier, August of 2008, when he took a decision from Andre Gusmayo. Was he at this point already a big part of preparing you for these fights?
No, he wasn't even nowhere to be found at this time. This was a time where we were just this is right before the whole John Jones era took over. It was after this fight, and I believe after I became champion, after the Machida fight and the Rampage fight, is when he started to come around.
All right, before we officially kick it off Saturday night, and you can rewatch, of course, this fight with us on UFC Fight Pass, trying to shout out some timestamps here and there to let you know where we are. Back real quick to that Friday weigh-in. That's maybe your first, it's your first chance to take off your shirt, go chest to chest with the damn Iceman. And again, we're talking about the legend. He's still the biggest star of all time. Lesnar hadn't made his move yet. Rousey and McGregor were to come. Chuck's the dude. What was it like that Friday weigh-in, going eyeball to eyeball with him?
It was like a dream come true. I grew up watching Chuck Liddell on TV, and and I was a big fan of Chuck Liddell, and I was aware of his devastation, his reign of devastation. Matter of fact, I was in the locker room when he knocked out Randy Couture, and I was with Randy, and I just remember you're like, dang, he just seemed so insurmountable at that time when he just dismissed, Randy Couture and then Tito Ortiz, and pretty much everybody was fighting. It was just like he was just dismissing them like they weren't even a challenge. So I was a fan of him. And then there I was standing face to face with Chuck Liddell. And it was crazy because as intimidating as Chuck Liddell was, he was one of the kindest fighters I ever met. This is how kind Chuck Liddell was. Chuck was so kind. When I told you that we went to Atlanta that time for the pre-fight, the UFC forgot to pick up my tab. So at the time I wasn't balling like that. And I was like, yo, they stiffed me on the bill, and the bill was like I don't know, like $1,200. And I didn't want to spend that money, So Chuck Liddell was like, oh, don't worry about it. And he took the bill and he paid it for me, man.
Okay, that's solid. That is
yeah,
solid.
he paid it for me. He paid it for me. And I'm sure the UFC reimbursed him, but just the simple fact that, what I'm saying, like, he's seen the look in my eyes and he was just like, don't worry about it, bro. I got you. Now I was going to fight him. I mean, I'm supposed to fight him, and he just, he did that, and it just kind of showed me the kind of heart that he had. But, with that said, I knew there was that heart, but then I knew on the other side of that, there was that ferocity of just, the ferociousness of competing.
Well, that Friday weigh-in, like I said, you guys were cordial. There was respect. But as you were walking to the cage, and we'll get to that in a second, but I want to ask it now, is that Mike Goldberg, the UFC play-by-play announcer, made a mention that Rashad, that you had gotten under Chuck's skin during the buildup by playing up the idea that he's an old man and you're coming for the old man. Do you remember where this came from, and was there any real contention there?
Yeah, it wasn't that bad though. I mean, I think I was just kind of like responding to just like his general talk of saying that Rashad is going to, stalemate and just kind of stand around, and I'm not going to allow it to happen. I'm going to knock him out if he tries to stalemate this fight out. And I was like, just trying to respond like, he's old, and just kind of, trying to find some confidence in there. But it wasn't nothing too bad, but I can kind of tell that, me even looking at him like that kind of made him want to piece me up pretty bad, but he kept his composure.
We kick off the UFC Fight Pass re-air of this. Rashad and I always get hyped up to see the video packages. You can see the young look in Rashad's face, just 28. Rashad says Chuck is going to come in ready, but he's going to see a Rashad Evans that no one has ever seen before. I think that would be true. Liddell says Rashad better be ready. If he thinks he's going to come in here and eke out a win like he normally does, I'm going to go after him and make it a brutal fight if he wants it. So Rashad, you had the head kick of Sean Salmon, but you had the draw with Tito. You had the split decision with Bisping. In both situations, you could have lost that fight with a wrong turn, or maybe, a late rally that didn't happen or did happen late to edge it. But did you feel like you're still coming in here with that reputation that if you could one day put it together, you could be great, but we still haven't seen it consistently?
Yeah, I was coming in with that kind of pressure, just the disrespect that I had going into this fight was crazy. It was crazy. I mean, there were reporters just pretty much, saying it without saying it, like, what have you done to earn the right to fight Chuck Liddell? That's how great Chuck Liddell was. Like you had to earn the right to fight Chuck Liddell. So when they were coming at me like that, I felt very disrespected. And going into fight week, I felt pretty good. I felt like I had a really good camp, but there was something that happened, the night before the fight. And I just got like this nerves that I couldn't shake, to the point where I was like, I called Randy Couture and I'm like, yo, Randy, man, I'm nervous, man. I'm nervous, man. I'm nervous. I'm nervous. So then he told me to come down. I came down to his room. And as soon as he opened the door, I was like, oh my God, Randy. And I just like fell on the floor. And I'm like, oh, and I fell on his bed. And I was like, oh my God, I'm so nervous. I never felt like this before. And, Randy was a mentor of mine at the time. Just always give me some good sage advice, like only Randy Couture can. He's, to this day, he's one of the best. If you ever got a problem, Randy might have the answer. He's that sage with his advice. So
I respect that. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's just like looking at me, just like wallowing, just, giving to my fear. Now, there's nobody cooler than a cucumber than Randy Couture when it comes to a fight. I watched this guy host a party of like 30 people before he went and fought, and he was cool with, like, he didn't have anything to do. Like, it was not a problem at all. So he's got ice running through his veins at all times. So he's looking at me just like, go ahead.
I love it. Well, we love you being candid about this. Was that fear about, the fact that you're undefeated and this was such a big move up? And you had headlined a pay-per-view before, but not against Chuck Liddell. So was it a fear of failure, of losing, or was it a straight up fear that you're going in there with a killer?
It was a fear of all of that. It was a fear of failure. It was a fear of, getting knocked out, because I never lost at that time. I never even got beat before, and never really been dazed, really. So I was just afraid of the unknown, afraid of what it would be like to fight Chuck Liddell, and I'm watching guys that I greatly admire and guys who I thought were so good, like Randy Couture, just get pieced up, and I'm like, man, me and Randy go. And whenever I go with Randy, it's a hell of a go. Like, Randy just doesn't stop. He's unrelenting, and I got to fight this guy. So I'm playing these mind games with myself. You know what I'm saying? So I'm in Randy's room, and I'm just like telling him like how I feel. And then Randy's like, he just looked at me after I get done from saying what I was saying. And then he says, the problem is the fact that, you haven't made friends with the worst outcome. You got to make friends with the worst outcome. He said, you got to understand that you can go in this fight and it can be the most embarrassing fight of your life. You can go in and get knocked out in seconds, and, you can be highlights of you all over. He said, but, the sun will still rise. There will be another day. You will live the fight again, and your family will still love you. He says, so what
That's
you
perfect.
need is perfect, right? It's perfect. And those were the things. Like, it's funny that when he put it in that perspective, I got to see the fight for what it was, and once he started speaking in that terms, and he said, you just got to make friends with the worst outcome. And I really started to think of that. And then when I walked out of his room for the next several hours, because that's when, it was the night before the fight and all my family members had left and went home, then I was just alone with my thoughts. And damn it, I went in that mirror and I stared in the mirror. And I tried to find that piece of me that was afraid. And I talked to myself in the mirror, and I cursed at myself in the mirror. And I just got it out. I just did like an emotional vomit to myself in front of the mirror, and just kind of like let it all out, what I was afraid of, to the point where, it kind of started to dissipate, that the feelings of—
It's like Jedi training, Rashad.
I'm telling you. It was like that. It was like that. And then, like, once I started to just like really, really accept that anything could happen, my body just started to just relax in a way that it hadn't relaxed up until that point, and then the next morning when I woke up, I was still feeling good, but I was still a bit nervous. But what made me feel better even then was we do a shakeout every morning. And when you do a shakeout, you just kind of like remind the body what we're here for, right? You hit mid, you bring your heart rate up. So the first time you bring your heart rate up is not when you're going to fight. So we bring a heart rate up early in the morning. And I was hit and miss with Coach Winkajohn. And that's when he said, you know what, you're going to hit him with this overhand right, and I'm not going to be able to get in there. I'm not going to get it. So that's when I was going into the fight on fight night with.
all these little things you're sprinkling in, man. I'm not sure you get through that fight without going through this, you know, and it's a beautiful thing to be able to recall that and sort of relive it. And you close this pre-fight video package by saying something interesting. You say, in my mind, I see it as a straight out brawl, and we are just getting after it. Now, the reason why I bring that up, Rashad, is because you had such success wrestling Michael Bisping the fight before. Although Chuck Liddell is known at this point for being an incredibly good takedown defense to protect the volatility of that right hand, how much were you thinking game plan wise coming in of whether you were even going to need to wrestle? Because spoiler alert, this fight goes 1.5 rounds. You don't shoot once. So was it, when you say that in that video, you meant it straight out brawl the whole way?
Yeah, there was no game plan to take him down. You know, we weighed it out and we thought maybe I could get him down, but what it could lead me, you know, as far as like trying to go for a takedown and being tired on my feet with Chuck Liddell would have been a bad move. So we were not going to take any takedowns unless one just like clearly presented itself.
Very, very interesting stuff. People would think maybe that would be a strategy for you, but you didn't need it. Liddell closed with, quote, "It's going to be real hard for him to make me uncomfortable in a fight. I enjoy a fight, so if he can make me uncomfortable, that would be a feat." Well, actually, you made him very comfortable, Rashad. You put him to sleep. We'll get to that in a second, though. Hey, betting odds for this one. Look, Vegas respected Chuck even late into his 30s, Rashad. He was the betting favorite over everyone, even the loss to Rampage, even the loss to Keith Jardine. He became the underdog for that Wanderlei fight, a slight underdog at plus 135, but by winning it, he was back to being in the minus 215. He opened against you as the favorite. It would close at minus 220. You would open as plus 175 and close as high as plus 215. So 2-1 here against you, Rashad. They are favoring the puncher with the experience. And here we go with the ring walks, Rashad. You come out wearing a t-shirt with the mugshot of a white guy straight on and then sideways. Who the heck is this? Is this something I missed?
That's Bill Gates.
Okay.
That is Bill Gates. That's Bill Gates when he got arrested in Albuquerque, and I was part of their campaign where they were trying to compete with Apple, and it was when they were like, "I'm a PC," right? And I did a commercial around there when I was like, "I'm a PC and I take people down. I'm a PC and I crush people in real life."
We're all a PC, inseparably one.
You got a problem with that?
If you look at, you might be able to Google that commercial.
I do remember. I remember the PC line now that you say it. I didn't pick up on the Bill Gates in the moment there. They dub over your walkout song because of rights issues, and they put a very generic, rappy, jazzy track over it. What did you walk out to that night?
I walked out to a song that really meant something to me because it really exemplified the moment that I was in. It was called "The Point of No Return" by Immortal Technique, because I knew that no matter what happened, the place that I was from, it doesn't exist anymore, because everything after this moment would be different. And I needed to accept it. So this was part of me just like making friends with the worst outcome, you know?
Well, it worked because I always look at things like this, like your expression when you hit the tunnel, and you came out, void of emotion, but not in a scared way or a scary psychopath way. You just came out ready for business is what it looked like, Rashad.
Yeah. What happened was like, so I was so nervous for this fight, and I just wasn't thinking like how I normally think. So when I got to the locker room, I was so busy thinking about the fight that I forgot to pack everything that I needed. And one of the things that I forget to pack was a cup. I forgot my freaking cup. I didn't have a cup. And it was crazy. I'm like 2 fights away from coming up, and I'm like, "Coach, you're gonna get mad at me, but I forgot my cup." And then we were too far away or too close to my fight for somebody to go and run and get it. So I had to use somebody else's cup.
Oh God. So whose cup, and was it used or clean? What's the deal here?
It was a used cup, freshly worn cup, still wet, dripping wet cup from Nate Marquardt.
Oh my God, Rashad. Was he the same size? I mean, this is what people want to know here. I guess it was a one size fits all here. All right.
I mean, he was 185, so I just had to throw the junk in there and just Listen, it felt absolutely gross because for one,
Yeah.
I wasn't sweating, and I get this drenched wet, like you can wring it out cup, and I had to put that joint on, and had to
I'll tell you
make.
what. These are
Yeah.
details you can only get on Storytime with Sugar. You pissed your pants in that tough finale fight. No one knew it during it, and now we're using somebody's used cup in the biggest fight of your life. But I love it.
Hey, BC, this is about how much you want to win, baby. If you
That's
want
what
to
I'm
win,
saying.
you better wear a pissy cup.
Yep. Yeah. I would have just reached right in, Marquardt, took it right out. All right, it's go time. It's time to win, brother. As you walk to the cage, Rogan says you are very dynamic in your movement. You're a dynamic wrestler and you're a good striker. Rogan, of course, mentions Keith Jardine's role and having your back, saying you guys aren't the same fighter, but he had a lot of success. Question, why the taped ankles for this fight?
I always felt like I moved better with my ankles taped, and that's one thing that I wish that I was able to continue to do. But so many commissions, they have a problem with that, because I have the way I move. If I don't have my ankles taped, I feel like I roll them, so it kind of messes up my movement, and it kind of gave me an extra spring being able to have those ankles taped, and it allowed me to kick without feeling like I'm going to hurt myself, so I loved having my ankle taped. And when I had my ankles taped, I was very springy.
Yeah, it's an icon. It's sort of a weird iconic look. Like I always know it's the Chuck fight because I see the taped ankles, at first glance when I see the tape. Chuck enters from the tunnel with a creepy smile and that long ass stare that he does, the Iceman Supreme stare. Huge pop, Rashad, from Phillips Arena here, the home of the Atlanta Hawks. He's the crowd favorite, no question. Although Rashad, there are a lot of black people in Atlanta. I feel like you should have had a big crowd here. Is that just me being a weirdo here?
Nah, you're right though. But here's the thing about it. Like back then, like the black folks, they wasn't really on to MMA, right? Like they are right now, or starting to be more towards, So at the time, they knew, but they weren't really on like they would be, later on.
Pre-fight narrative from Goldberg is that Liddell realized he wasn't in elite shape when he lost to Keith Jardine. He fixed that for the Vanderlei fight. That fight went 3 rounds. It was a war. Chuck has been working on his sprawl in anticipation of fighting you, thinking that the wrestling is coming. A lot of talk of best shape he's been in some time. And Chuck, even though Chuck's music is dubbed for the sake of Fight Pass, you can still hear that DMX in the background, the iconic when you hear that, Rashad, because you are now in the cage or maybe the prep point at this point, as Chuck hits the arena, you hear the screams and you hear RIP DMX. That's a moment, right? That's, he's coming for you, brother. All right.
It's an iconic moment. And if you've been a Chuck Liddell fan, you start to realize at that moment, like, yo, I'm fighting Chuck Liddell. Like, that's when I started to realize the magnitude of what was about to happen. And it's crazy to think that, right? Because like at different phases of this fight, I had a dose of, yo, you're fighting Chuck Liddell, It was one at the weigh-in, and then there was another one once, he was walking out. And then I look up and I see my name, Rashad Evans, and then I see the little banner that's above, the arena. You know how it says Rashad Evans versus Chuck Liddell? So it said my name. I'm like, oh, Johnny. And I said Chuck Liddell. And I'm just like, wow, I'm really fighting Chuck Liddell, and he's walking out to DMX, and I was like, this is insane. So like I was just in the moment. I was so in the moment when his music came on. I started rocking with it. Yeah, I was dancing to it.
Chuck got a second giant pop upon entering the cage. You're dancing there. You're dressed in black trunks with a few sponsorships on there. Chuck is in his typical blue with the white drip Iceman trunks, but he's got the word pain spelt out in red letters across his ass cheeks. So he's ready to bring it here, Rashad. They bring up a graphic of your strengths. Division I college wrestler, looks for the slam, it says, and quick hands. So that's as we head into the tail of the tape here. Liddell 38, Rashad 28. He has a 6'2" height advantage to your 5'11", and the reach is nearly the same, 1 inch in the favor of Liddell. Herb Dean, the referee, did that matter at that point at all to you?
No, but Herb was always a good referee. His instruction was always clear, and he always made sure he went out the way to make sure that I understood everything that was going to happen in the octagon, so I felt comfortable. And that's one thing I can always say about Herb. Herb always makes sure that if he's reffing you, you feel comfortable with everything.
All right, your ring announcement from Bruce Buffer starts. And Rashad, this is where we just straight up call you out for being weird. You're really going at those nipples, bro. It's like Tune in Tokyo over here. What's happening here?
I'm going at him because here's the thing about it. Like, I'm trying to knock this nervousness off, but I don't know if the camera really caught me, right? I didn't know if the camera caught me.
Oh, it caught you twice with the titty
Well,
twisters, bro.
I know, but I had to get into the mode because at that time it was time for Sugar to perform, and I needed to just get over this.
Sugar's a freak.
Sugar
Sugar needs to get warmed up, you know.
Hey,
All right.
Sugar is sexual chocolate. He was feeling himself, man.
No wonder that lady was screaming in the crowd all night. All right. Mix of cheers and boos for you. Big pro Chuck Liddell crowd, of course. Chuck gets announced. I mean, look, nobody, again, very few fighters have ever had that connection with the crowd. It feels like a fun moment. They span the crowd, Chuck. A lot of white people, a lot of Affliction t-shirts, a lot of tap out t-shirts. This is 2008, mind you. We head to the stare down. You're singing as the two of you are respectfully eyeing each other. We do touch gloves. What are you singing right there? DMX still?
Nah, it was the Immortal Technique song.
Okay.
It was the Immortal Technique song, the point of no return.
All right.
Go ahead.
We touch gloves. We get it going here in round one, Rashad. The crowd is hyped. They are so hyped that they're not chanting something, but they're so hyped that there's almost a chorus of just sound that's building around here. Do you remember this crowd and this, as a pay-per-view main event? I mean, it's a giant fight in comparison to any other fight you'd had.
Yeah, the crowd was deafening to the point where it made it really hard to hear like simple instruction, I really had to focus on what the game plan was because I couldn't really hear my corner. I didn't really even know what corner they were in. It was so loud.
Well, excuse me. We start off with really the same pattern we'd be in for the first few minutes of the open this fight. Chuck stalking you with that right hand. You're staying on the outside on your bicycle, kind of pumping jabs, but more of just, range finders. You had to believe he's going to do. I mean, him and Dan Henderson, they tell you ahead of time, right? I'm coming in there with this thing and I'm going to keep it cocked the whole time. The crowd's waiting to see, is he going to crack you first? Are you going to take him down first? What do you remember feeling and game planning for in those first few minutes?
Well, I remember just trying to get his timing down, right? Because whenever you fight anybody, you got to kind of see their speed. You got to see how fast they close the distance. You got to try to figure all that out without sustaining too much damage. So I was getting my reads on him, making my reads on him, seeing how fast his right hand was coming, and just trying to figure it out. But more or less, even though I was trying to figure out what he was doing, I was making it so it was hard for him to really nail me down, right? So he was really starting to chase me and really start to just like overextend himself. And that's what we wanted. We wanted to be like the matador and the bull. I'm the smaller fighter. And I was really low, crunched down to the ground, if you notice that as well, too. So it made it even harder for him to punch me because he had to punch down. And if you ever punch down at something, it's a lot harder than punching at your range because missing is harder to recover from. So being that I was nice and low, it made it hard for him to punch me. And then I would just swing out these left hooks and I would catch him and it would just piss him off because it was just like a little nick, and it was just enough to frustrate him, but not enough to hurt him. It was just a little nick to just be like, to enrage him so he couldn't see nothing but just wanting to knock me out.
Well, I think you guys indirectly pissed off the fans just a little bit because they were so hyped from the beginning. But outside of you sort of just pumping your left hand, quickly, nervously, lazily, we didn't get an actual punch thrown for the first 37 seconds until Liddell stepped forward, missed with the right hand. He tries another one at 4'11", and you duck out nicely and exit to your left. So we're learning right away that it's not going to be easy for him. You got quicker feet. You're willing to circle on the outside, and you're not at this point going to sit down and trade with him. Rogan jumps in to reiterate the Goldie point from earlier about your comments that he's old. Not only pissed Chuck off, but Joe reports that Chuck took it out on his sparring partners all camp. So he's ready to kill you right here at 344. Mike Goldberg refers to you as Rashard Evans. So there, we got that going for us off the start here. That's also, Rashad, when you switched to southpaw briefly. Now, from my calculations, You switched 3 times in this fight. You never actually threw a punch, though. How much did you expect that to be a look that you were going to show Chuck?
I trained for it. You know, I wanted to really throw some combinations for him from the left side, but I just never felt comfortable doing it. And when it came down to it, what I seen was I seen that every single time I went to my left stance, it made him had to make the adjustment. So whenever I would force a reset, I would keep doing it because forcing a reset, it bought me time, and it bought, you know, it just would allow me a little bit more time to set a trap or just kind of get him even more frustrated because he had to respect the stance switch because he didn't know what was coming.
Well, you had to know that I mean, he had a left hand, he had a left hook that was good, but it's either the overhand right or the right uppercut. I mean, that's what Chuck did. So it's like you had to know, okay, I can't stand and trade with him. I can't stand still, but I think all your constant movement and resetting, to your point, really started to work. At 3:30, though, Chuck lands his first punch, a decent jab, but the crowd starts to realize at this point, 90 seconds in, that nothing's really happening. You can hear some whistling, but they're getting a little impatient. But I've circled this moment, 3:24 the first round. You let go your first big right hand attempt. And Rashad, it would look like the punch that you would go to finish him with, but Liddell turned and almost did a Mayweather shoulder roll, and the punch grazed off his shoulder as you followed through. And I couldn't tell if you actually hit his face or not. Do you remember that giving you any kind of confidence that that's there? You just missed it.
Yeah, I remember I didn't catch him clean with it, but what he felt was he felt like the power to it, right? And then after he felt the power to it, he was a little bit more cautious on how he pursued because he knew that I had that power. So he was a little bit more cautious, and he allowed me to, after that point, be in the center of the octagon a little bit. You know what I'm saying? Like I would, instead of just chasing me around, after that, I got to be the center of the octagon and he was on the outside a little bit. So it kind of changed things up a little bit because after I threw that, he knew that, okay, he's got a little bit of power too.
Yeah, and up to that point, to your point, he had been the aggressor. Here's where it starts to switch in a nice early moment for Liddell. At 3:14, he settles into more of a counterpunching role. And instead of going over your jab, he counters your jab with sort of this right cross from underneath your left hand that catches you on the chin as he grazes by. In fact, Rashad, it looked like it stunned you enough, maybe not stunned you, but woke you up enough that you responded with very exaggerated shoulder movement to the point where Goldie goes, this is the kind of stuff that pissed Matt Hughes off during the Ultimate Fighter season. So we're already back on Rashad as a showboater again, but was that in response to the fact that he did catch you?
Yeah, it was. You know, that was a good punch too. It was a nice little zinger. And it was one of those punches that kind of gave me a little bit of confidence because, you know, I kind of felt like I took a decent punch from Chuck then. You know what I'm saying? Like it was one that I felt, but it was also one that kind of worried me a bit too because I didn't see it. And the reason why I didn't see it is not because I didn't see it take off, was because I thought it was another punch. And usually you can tell a punch just how the shoulder opens up, right? When somebody wants to throw a hook, their shoulder opens up a certain kind of way, and you can see that as a hook. Well, with Chuck Liddell, all of his punches open up the same way. So it's like a change up in baseball. It can open up like a hook, but then turn into a straight cross about time it gets to your face. And that's one thing that I had to like take an immediate notice of right during the fight and had to take some real time. Like, yo, this is a lot different than we trained. Nobody said anything about this. You know, it was like one of those type of things.
Very sneaky shot under your jab, very tight, landing on the inside to your chin. And now we hit basically the halfway point of the first round. I think, Rashad, this probably surprised a lot of people. It was largely a chess match. You hit a nice kick, front kick to the body, which again offset his rhythm. Then he comes lunging forward with a right hand at 227. You sidestep that again. So your lateral movement on point. You miss a very tight, short right cross at 156, Rashad, that I thought could have been a big money punch. But what it did is this is where the crowd is finally like, okay, we've had enough of this chess match. We got straight up boozed for the lack of thunder. Does that affect you? Do you hear that at this point in the fight when you are dialed and locked in?
You know, I heard it for sure. I heard it, but you got to remember at the time, that's all I have ever been was booed anyway. So for me to get a boo, it meant nothing. But I knew it mattered to him. I knew it mattered to him. When he heard the boos, I knew it would bother him. And I know that, like, I seen it with other fighters, you know, when they got booed, they would do something because they didn't want to get booed. But for me, I didn't care if I got booed. I was used to getting booed.
Yeah, and you were used to, anyone who watched our listened to our story time with Rashad through The Ultimate Fighter felt like the company was, everybody was against you through that, and you persevered and you won. Well, at 134, you get another nice leg kick, and you were very elusive. Again, two more right hands, you are ducking, you're seeing them coming in with ease. And then we get some more of this exaggeration from Rashad. You're getting some, I don't know if it's like a level change fake, but you're kind of squatting down, as you mentioned, and it actually leads to Rogan saying, I can't figure out if Rashad is trying to lure Chuck in or if he's just showboating. All right. Okay. We get it, guys. All right. He's the black guy. He's the entertainer. No, he's a damn good fighter, and he's keeping Chuck off rhythm, you mother effer. I mean, come on.
That's what the early UFC was. You know what I'm saying? They didn't really, you know, you know, they had that kind of biased commentating back then. You know, it was just, you know, if a black guy was good, it's not because he actually had, you know, technique, is because he was an athlete. If you go back and you watch a lot of those commentaries, they would talk about, you know, whether it's Chuck Liddell or not Chuck Liddell, whether it's who was it, Josh Koscheck or myself, it was always because they were an athlete. Not that we weren't athletes, but we were athletes, but we were just more than just athletes, right? But yeah, it was just the temperature of how things were back then.
Well, and you know, Liddell's the bigger star, and the broadcast can only see what they see in real time. But interesting sequence here. At 1 minute and 8 seconds of the first round, you land another one of these looping right hands, which would be a foreshadowing of the finishing punch. Only this one, Rashad, Liddell was able to turn away from it just at the point of impact. So you touched him, but you didn't get him out of there. And not only did the broadcasters miss that, we got Goldie talking about how Liddell's counter jab looked pretty stiff there. Again, do you feel like you are right there to catching him with that go home punch?
I do. Like, I feel like I was really surprised at how I was able to connect, you know, and it all started with me with that slapping left hook. And once I was able to catch him with that slapping left hook, and he started just over pursuing, I was surprised at how much I was just able to catch him with these shots, the punch that just kind of, you know, left his visuals because they were so wide and looping, and the next thing you know, boom, they'll come back and catch him. So I was surprised.
It just goes to show you timing and precision, and like, you know, these two right hands that you've missed that we've talked about, they look a lot like the one you finished him with, only the one you would go to finish him with was the perfect time as he's leaning in to punch with you. So, you know, you're just missing twice. You would get him that third time, but at 46 seconds, first mention on the broadcast, this by Rogan, that Rashad has yet to go for any type of standing clinch or a takedown. And then Goldie reveals something that I couldn't figure out rewatching it, Rashad, a cut below the right eye of Chuck Liddell on his cheek. Do you remember what caused that?
Yeah, it was these slapping left hooks. You know, it was like these left hooks that I was throwing, they were so fast, and it's really hard to see. Like I said, look, they're so fast. Look at me pat myself on the back, but they were fast, right?
I didn't mention them yet, and it looks like Rogan and Goldie missed them, so they're pretty damn fast, Rashad.
Yeah,
right?
they're really fast, but they were happening in movement. So like a lot of times where it looked like nothing was happening, I wasn't connecting. I was actually connecting with these left hooks, and it didn't take much of it to leave a mark on his face.
All right, 22 seconds to go in round one. Remind you, up to this point, you've just nicked him. He had that one good right hand on you. Chuck Liddell corners you against the fence, and it looks like we're going to have to fight for the first time. Only Chuck misses with an overhand right above your jab. He tried to time that. He came right back, though, with a short uppercut underneath it. Sneaky little punch there, Rashad. You would try to sit down and answer him. You missed a big right hand, but the threat of that right hand allowed you to escape. Was that a bit of an oh shit moment where he missed over your jab, but then comes right back under it? We don't normally see a left uppercut there from Liddell.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was saying. Like, Chuck's punches were very hard to see. And I didn't really feel comfortable by going toe to toe with him. So whenever he came in that range and we were in the 50-50 range where he can hit me and I can hit him, I was looking for maybe hitting 2 or 3 punches and then getting the hell out of Dodge. Like, I was not going to try to stand in there and try to be like, oh yeah, you hit me, because I knew at some point he would catch me because I wasn't seeing his punches. I truly wasn't seeing them.
I'll have to tell you though, I don't necessarily remember what my emotions were watching it live. I remember the finish, not this, but rewatching this first round, it looked like he's still the alpha dog, even though you're doing a good job avoiding him. The story of this fight is Chuck chasing you and Chuck starting to catch up. That's what I'm feeling as we go to the end of round one here. Is that unfair, Rashad?
No, it's really fair, because at that point he started to get the timing. He's starting to get, when he should go, because it's like a game of double dutch, right? You got to know when to jump in, and he was starting to understand when to jump in, and he was starting to fight his perfect game, because, Chuck is a counter fighter, and he does that by putting pressure on somebody. He puts that pressure on the person, and then when a person feels smothered, they open up with the ill-advised combination, not really being ready, but just kind of throwing a punch because the presence is there. Then he catches them with the counter shot, and I felt him doing that to me. So that's why I would like throw maybe 2 or 3 and just try to run out of there as fast as I could.
It's funny. He's 38. He looks like an old man now, but he's still sneaky with these shots. And at the buzzer to end round one, Chuck tried an ill-advised running head kick in which you saw it coming, so you stepped to the side. Herb Dean was so nervous it was going to hit you after the horn that he jumped in and kind of intercepted it. I thought Herb was going to get KO'd there. That was a wild finish, Rashad.
See, that's why I like Herb, man. Herb was down like that. Herb would take a kick for you, man. But yeah, man, when Chuck threw that kick, I swear, like, you feel like sometimes when somebody throws a punch or a combination or throws something at you and it misses, you may be able to, you can tell how much power it had on you just by the wind that goes by you. And that joint had some serious wind, I felt afterwards. And I'm like, man, if he would have caught me with that one, it would have been a bad one. It was so much wind on that kick.
Well, Chuck sits down on the stool. We got to zoom in on his cut. Rogan says, we didn't see that Rashad connected with any real solid punches, but sometimes it's the grazing ones that do the most damage, to your point about that short left hand. And then Coach Wink gets in your face, says, keep moving and making him miss. You are pissing him off. Interesting advice, considering Joe Rogan and Goldie would instantly shit on it, jump in and go, hey, I'm not sure he needs to make Chuck miss. He's going to have to land something or he may not be able to win these rounds. Rashad, your thoughts listening back on that?
It's funny because they didn't know the game plan, right? But, it's in this fight game, there's so many different ways and so many different, I guess, strategies to be employed. And it's not always about just going in there and meeting fire with fire. Sometimes you got to be cagey. Sometimes you got to be able to be a little bit more strategic in there to find the openings that you can.
Well, to the point of their criticism, I looked at anyone I could find. MMA Junkie was doing a live blog. They had it 10-9 Liddell after round one, a close round. Again, he probably 10-9 Chuck. But did you feel like that was a good round for you from this standpoint? You'd go on to knock him out the next round. Was your game plan, I'm going to catch him with a counter and I'm going to finish him? Or at some point, considering this is still a 3-round pay-per-view main event, do you feel like, I got to get on my horse now in round 2 and do something?
I felt everything was going to plan. I felt as if I've overexceeded what we planned to do that round. I didn't really get into any
Eye on College Basketball is the most entertaining and informative podcast of its kind. You can find it as part of the CBS Sports Podcast Network. I'm Matt Norlander, co-host alongside Gary Parrish. We are continuing to give you twice-a-week episodes tied to not just college basketball, but the NBA draft, which is coming at the end of July. We have full-fledged profile episodes dedicated to the prospects that are going to be taken high in the draft. So listen to us, be part of the show, be part of the experience. You can find us by following Eye on College Basketball Podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, and wherever else podcasts are found.
What's the quickest way to dominate your fantasy baseball league outside of Fernando Tatis Jr.? It's Fantasy Baseball Today in 5, part of the CBS Sports Podcast Network. Join Chris Towers or Scott White and myself, Frank Stanfill, every weekday as we get you the best waiver wire ads, bullpen updates, news, notes, and much more in just 5 minutes. You can follow FBT in 5 on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, and wherever else podcasts are found.
Excuse me. I didn't really sustain any bad punches or get in any scary situation. And I was able to land some shots. And more importantly, I was able to make a miss. And he was getting pissed. And he was chasing me around the cage. And you can just see the look in his eyes. He was just fuming because he couldn't catch me.
All right. Chuck's corner tells him, be patient, keep doing exactly what you're doing. We stand opposite each other before the start of round 2, and it says Joe Rogan jumps in, said Rashad looking to put on a show still. Chuck would like to put an end to the dancing. Man, these guys just cannot appreciate, okay? They cannot appreciate showmanship, getting one hyped up. Hey, the dancing prevented Chuck from landing that there missile. All right, guys. Here we go, round 2. Inside leg kick from Liddell at 429, and he nearly lands a huge right hand to follow. But I like the way you sort of sat down underneath it, flurried your way out. Rashad, this was action picking up because he found a way to kind of corner you and put you in a spot where you had to fight your way out.
Yeah, after that happened in the first round, I knew that if I'm going to leave, I can't leave how I left the last time, because in my mind, I'm still remembering that kick that went over my head. So I'm like, I got to be able to start throwing at the end of these combinations. And also at this point is where I started to realize that if I'm not finishing with my left hand, then he's able to come over the top and hit me with his right hand. So I was trying to always finish with my left. And the only way I knew how to finish with my left is just kept throwing combinations.
Well, this had to make Chuck Liddell happy because finally he got you into a spot where you were going to sit and fight, because a second later, you guys are back at it. This is a legitimate exchange, not a ton landing, but you were able to, you tried a 3-punch combo. The only thing you landed was a right cross to finish it. You had your feet planted in. You were not there to run. You may have ducked out of that first sequence, but you sat down. Both of you let go 3-punch combos. I don't think he touched you at all. Did you feel like you got a lot on that right cross?
Yeah, I felt like I got a pretty good catch in that punch sequence. You know, I'm thinking like this. Have you ever seen a dog get backed in a corner by, a cat get backed in a corner by a dog?
Oh yeah.
That was me, Chuck Liddell. Like, I'm like, like a cat, like a little cat, feline cat, just trying to make sure that I stayed moving the whole time. But when I caught him with that right hand, I was like, okay, I can do this. I can settle down a little bit in the pocket because I was fundamentally like sound enough to be able to cover my bases and still rip some punches.
Well, you can see the frustration on Chuck being unable to hit you clean. At the 4-minute mark, he misses a somewhat weak right cross. He's kind of off balance. You counter with almost an exaggerating Bugs Bunny-like changeup looping shot. Not the one you would finish him with. You missed it, but it was uncharacteristic from there. 15 seconds later, though, at 3:44, we get a leaping left hook right hand follow from Rashad that forces Chuck to like slide and reset his feet. You escape out of trouble right there. Rashad, I wrote down on my notes here, you are making him skip to your loo. Where did this sort of leaping left hook come from?
Well, I mean, I was just starting to grow in confidence. Like, I've landed a couple of shots now. He's missed a couple of shots. He's hit me with a couple of shots, and I'm still there. So as the fight's going on, I'm starting to pick up confidence. And not only that, I'm starting to notice that he's respecting my punches, you know? So he's now starting to respect my punches. He's not trying to walk through anything. He's taking notice that I'm cracking a little bit. And now he's weary. You know, he's kind of being a little bit weary coming inside. So my confidence started to grow. And I'm like, man, I can catch this dude.
Well, your confidence is growing and he's slowing down. It's only round 2 here, but you can see a mixture of frustration and fatigue setting in at 3:33. A nice short left hook from Rashad. You just missed with the right hand coming over the top. And that causes Chuck to take another sort of step to the side. He's slowing down. He's chasing suddenly. 10 seconds later, Rashad, you barely miss another big right hand in which Rogan goes, Rashad is getting more confident here. So it's visually, we can see it. So this is where Chuck, fight or flight, right? He's going to fight. So 3:10, we get some huge stalking from Liddell. Sets up side-by-side moment to sort of, side-by-side moment, L1 and R1 to sort of get out of it. Chuck attempts a looping right hand from hell after 2 power jabs. He just can't catch up with you, Rashad. He just cannot catch up with you.
Yeah, I mean, the bounce that I had, being able to go in and out, and also being able to present him with something that he had to respect, it was just bothering him to the point where he was just like, look, I just want to get it over with. I want to be able to just knock him out. And you can see him like just starting to be more and more unpatient with it. Like, I just seen it in his face. Like he was really showing the intention in his face that he was trying to punch me. And the more so, he was showing me that he was really trying to land that right hand. And I was thinking, like, you know, I kept seeing him just looking to land that right hand, because Chuck has like a thing that he does with his upper body where he kind of like almost starting to pre-turn it before he actually throws a punch. And I was like, okay, he's looking for that right hand.
Well, all this tension that we're building right here, it's going to lead to an explosion, and here it comes. 1 second later, Rashad, you pumped a jab, then you pawed one, and then you came over. You caught Chuck at the perfect point. Frustration, fatigue setting in. He had just missed a right hand. He's sort of in between his movements, and you uncork a right hand from the deep, dark depths. Talk me through this one, Rashad. It is, to this day, still one of the most brutal, one of the most iconic one-punch finishes in UFC history.
Well, I seen him wanting to come with the right hand, and I was thinking, like, before all of that sequence happened was, you know, he's coming with that right hand. I got to make sure I finish with my left punch. So all I was thinking about was just throwing that left hand. So there's a thing that Coach Winklejohn would tell me all the time. He'll tell me, you know, throw when they throw. He says, throw on throw, right? So when I see him just throw, I just throw a combination. The minute I just see the punch come, I go at the same time, no matter what punch he's throwing, I'm just going to go. So I seen him going with that right hand. And as soon as I seen him go with the right hand, I just let off with mine as fast as I could. But I was thinking the whole time, let me just land with the left hook. So what I really wanted more than anything was I was really trying to hit him with the left hook. The right hand was just something fast to throw to kind of get me over to the left hook side. But I really thought I was going to clean him up with the left hook.
I was going to say, Rashad, if you had missed with this looping right hand, not only would you have had to deal with that right uppercut that he had thrown at the same time, which didn't get there in time, but that left hand that you had coming over the top was going to destroy him if the right hand didn't. I mean, you had sat down, you had committed that, you had threw the uncorking right one, which finished him, but that left thing coming across meant serious business. It wouldn't be necessary, because I think he bit on that first pump jab. I think it was the first pump jab that started to get him in the early coil up. You saw it coming, second punch, and then by the time that right uppercut's coming, and look, like when you landed those two right hands in round one, which looked like this punch, it wasn't when he was punching. He was able to see it better. He was able to just get out of the way or just get nicked with it, or that first time it had grazed his shoulder, because you were willing to punch with him here, as you said. I mean, his guard was down. It was masterpiece theater. I mean, Rashad, that's when somebody's the most vulnerable, right? When they are loading up to come at you. Think Manny Pacquiao, the fourth fight with Marquez. It's just perfect timing that Pacquiao is leaping in as this right hand counter nails him. Same thing with McGregor and Aldo. You punch together, and so here's the deal. I'm watching this in the ESPN.com newsroom, a place you'd been many times for MMA Live, this was going on during this time that you had become an analyst for MMA Live there at ESPN.com. And Rashad, this is one of those, not just iconic, but scary. I mean, I thought you killed Chuck. I was like, this is what happens when two alphas get in there. And they're not trying to play for the decision. Like, they're going for it. That was one of those where I just remember being like, I don't know if I could keep watching this kind of stuff, because that's real, man. That's, like that's the real shit right there. That's as real as it gets, as the UFC slogan used to be. I mean, Rashad, that's some real shit. You like, the ghost floated away after you finished him. I mean, that is a warrior who was willing to risk it all to try to win it all. And he risked it all, and you took it all away from him there. I mean, Rashad, that's a dream moment, only it's not a head kick to Sean Salmon. It's a pay-per-view main event that would lead to the title shot, in which you one punch knocked out the biggest star in the sport's history up to that point. What is that euphoric next 5 seconds like after you connect? You jump in to try to finish. Herb Dean weighs it off. What the hell are you feeling?
Man, when I threw that overhand right and it connected, it just felt like a good swing on the baseball. Like, I knew I had good contact, and it really felt like nothing. It was just like a really smooth feeling. Like, it was like, It felt really smooth, but I remember hitting him and just watching him fall away out of the corner of my eye. And I say the corner of my eye because at that point I had swung the left hook, and I see him fall out of my view, and I'm looking, and he's falling out of my view that way. And I'm hearing my corner yell at me to go uncover and get him. And this all happened in a split second. And this is the craziest thing. Like when your adrenaline is going, it's like the whole world slows down, like the Matrix. Like everything would just slow down. It felt like it took me forever to come out of that left hook. I'm just like, man, I remember still being like this, like, oh my gosh, he's falling. And he was just like falling. And I'm like, okay. And as soon as I finished the left hook, I went to cover him, and he was gone. And I was just in shock. I was in shock because he dropped as if like he got shot. He dropped like he got shot. And then the sound of it was just like, it was a brutal sound. But what got me more than anything was just the deafening silence of the arena.
That's the hush and the fear of the crowd was like, you actually can hear shrieks. So what you can hear the punch. You hear Rogan do his typical scream. He yells, "Oh my God, oh cold." Goldie jumps in and says, "Big uppercut." Thanks, Goldie. It was, that's a big uppercut there, huh? But you can start to hear people like, "Oh my God." And I think this is the difference. Remember this 2008. So you're getting a lot of, at that point, me, a big boxing guy who watches UFC, but is a big boxing guy. You don't get knockouts this crisp, clean, and violent in boxing, maybe because of the 8-ounce or 10-ounce gloves, right? This is 4-ounce gloves on the money where, like you said, I mean, he's done. He is a bag of bones. It is, both guys swinging for the fences. What a moment. But I think in hindsight here, as Herb Dean flips Chuck over to try to wake him up, you're not celebrating. You're looking calm. You look a little bit of that like cool assassin vibe, but until you went into that celebratory dance, which we can get to in a second, you looked almost pained. Was there legitimate fear at this point that like, I thought Manny Pacquiao got killed by Juan Manuel Marquez with that punch, right? Did you have legitimate fear? Like, I may have just killed this guy.
Yeah, I was kind of nervous at first, and I went to go and check on him. But what made me nervous was just like when I went to go check on him, they were like pushing me away, like, go away. They didn't want me to go near him. And they didn't want me to go near him because they didn't want the cameras to follow me. They didn't want no cameras on Chuck. So that kind of made me feel like, oh my gosh, this is something serious, And the look in Herb's eyes was kind of worrisome. You know how like you can see like a panic in somebody's eyes, and he's like waving people to come in real quick, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, what happened? And then I see everybody start running to the cage really fast to try to get Chuck to get Chuck up, because he was out for a minute. And I was like, whoa, it was unreal. It was unreal.
Well, you eventually settle into a celebration mode, and Luke Thomas calls it the Fred Sanford, the fake heart attack thing. It's his favorite thing that you've ever done. Was that just spontaneous in the moment? This is the biggest win of your career. This is basically winning a championship.
Yeah, it was spontaneous. I was a big Sanford and Son fan, and one of my biggest things that I used to love when he used to say, "I'm coming to join you. This is the big one, Elizabeth. I'm coming to join you." And that's what I was feeling like. I feel like this is the big one, Elizabeth. I didn't knock that Chuck down. Oh my God. I was feeling like I just went into my Fred Sanford moment. And it was heart stopping, man. It really was.
Goldie yells, "What an upset." And, betting wise, 2-1, it was an upset technically. Rogan yells like a lightning bolt out of nowhere. So Rashad, once you celebrate, you see Chuck is sitting up to a degree, but he's still, not in great spirits. Let's be honest. He's still, mangled there. Do you have the your whole life and career cross in front? Do you have one of those full circle, like, I did it, like, oh my God moments? I mean, is that what's going on there?
Hell yeah. At that moment, I'm just like I arrived, like it was like, how you doing? Nice. Like I finally got to meet a part of myself that I had not yet met before, because, and I say that because it's one thing to show up to a fight and just fight, but it's another thing to just kind of, fight out of your your ability. Yeah, I can't even say ability, but just at the time it was out of my ability, and I knew I could fight. I didn't know I could fight. You know what I'm saying? And I was just like, whoa, this boy got, I was just like, I finally arrived, and to arrive like that